Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened. So today, we return to the campaign of 12 Trees, and our heroes have just returned from Fort Stormshot with a big pile of papers from research labs, from menagerie locations, from Bradford's old office in the fort itself, from people's bedrooms, all over the fort. And they just scooped it all up into Brendo's bag. They fought a bunch of monsters, etc., etc., and they came back to the house, to 12 Trees Manor, if you will, to sort through it all and see what they could learn about the cult of 12 Trees and what they were up to. So I have all of those things that they found here. I printed them out so that I could read them to you verbatim, because a big chunk of this campaign was gathering information that I literally gave them on like bits of paper and scrolls and letters and notes and journals and like research and development notepads and all kinds of things like that. Not unlike a point-and-click adventure game like the house was when we first started. None of these characters were around to talk to, so all of their mail and their diaries, etc., etc., was going to have to convey the story for them. So the party is not entirely convinced that 12 Trees is dead and gone, but they've got some working theories going on, among which is that 12 Trees was probably powerful enough, all 13 members of them, to switch bodies with somebody else, and that the reason that they have been called to 12 Trees Manor is that Bradford is secretly still alive and wants to pin one of them as like his heir and then switch bodies with them so that whatever sickness or whatever that he had would go to them, and he would have a fresh new body, and his culty friends would get fresh new young bodies as well, because not all of them were elves. That's kind of the theory they're going with right now. And it's very difficult to run like a mystery and intrigue kind of campaign, because players are very smart. They'll see your simple bullshit coming from a mile away. Now, the body switching theory wasn't even close, but that was kind of what they were going with because of what happened during this session. So let's get into it, shall we? I teased all these papers last time and didn't get to them, so let's do that now, and I'll just read them to you. Let's see. And like I said, the three main members of 12 Trees was Uncle Bradford, Emily, their scientist, and then Primus. So you'll hear a bunch of names in here. These are all names of the cult members, but they weren't in and of themselves very important, so don't try to keep track of 13 different names. Just remember Bradford, Emily, and Primus. Those are the main three. The other 10 were important, but not super important to the campaign, so let's not hurt ourselves trying to remember 18 different fucking characters. So I'll just read these to you. This is what they found in Fort Stormshot. They didn't want to stop and read it because there were monsters about, so they threw it all in Brendo's bag. And they said, we'll sort through this when we get home safe. So Annabelle is serving coffee and tea. Vara has found a chair big enough for herself and brought it back from market. They're all around the dining room table. They've kind of let Annabelle in on what's going on. Not completely, because she's like their beautiful, innocent servant girl, and they don't want to corrupt her with all the crazy bullshit that's going on. But let's read, shall we? To Emily, I need you to make some magic rings for us. Yellow gold, green gems, with activation protocols on them. The password is as follows. For the glory of 12 Trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command. See if you can get them all done by this fall. I know you're busy trying to find an appropriate power source for the Stormbringer cannon, but we must take steps to defend ourselves in case we arouse suspicion in Dewhurst. Wiping High Seat, which is the capital, off the map and replacing it with raw, wild forest is in reality only step one. After that, the massive output of magic will be traced here 12 trees can only defend us so well, so we must have an impenetrable home like our fortress to protect us. Thankfully for us, Scarlet is savvy in the ways of stocking the place for all 13 of us. I have encouraged Jacob, Marindar, Kaitos, Canner, Argos, and Matthias to head into Dewhurst and knock up a few willing sluts during the flower festival. Should we fail and be wiped out, our bloodlines will continue, and steps can be taken to make sure that the Druids of the Storm live on in the next generation. I know you and Primus are an item, but consider conceiving outside our little circle, yes? A bit of wine put into Primus had him telling me you've enjoyed a good threesome now and then. I myself have fathered a number of children over the years and scattered them to the winds, in case I should be slain. Argos was right to start such a tradition in Dewhurst and call it a nature-loving festival. Remember to be careful in your travels between this fort and Dewhurst. I'm hearing rumors about some big-shot huntress moving about the area. We don't need any strangers sniffing around our plans. From Bradford. So they learn immediately that the thing that Emily is building and powering with a Kieran is called the Stormbringer Cannon, and they mean to destroy the capital of the country, High Seat, with it, and replace that with wild forests. So they are wiping out a city to replace it with like the wilds. They think it's the hubris of man. We must wipe them out because we are evil druids. And Druids of the Storm, I stole that from I think 4th edition, because in 4th edition they would just like give you a character based on a certain branch of abilities, and in the clerics section it was called Druids of or Clerics of the Sun and Clerics of the Storm, and those were the two kinds of clerics you could be. And so I was like, that makes more sense if you were talking about druids. So it would be the Druids of the Storm. They want to command nature. They're evil druids. What else we got here? To Bradford. I don't think it's a good idea for us to be bringing other Druids of the Storm into Fort Stormshot, especially the North Storm, which is another faction of druids. We may share the same ideologies, but some of those people are too extreme. Do you remember when they brought that rain staff to us to be recharged? I'm all for druidic orgy magic to make sure that it rains in certain areas, but Rewa wasn't able to sit for a week. The way they laughed at her during and afterwards, it didn't sit well with me. Tell them to bring their own human magic conduit next time. I'll not have them fucking our women in the ass to charge their magic items. That's not the way it's meant to be done. 24 druid circle ritual or no. Failing crops or no. In the meantime, Emily has been complaining about some of the beasts in the menagerie. She and I don't think that we can contain so many magical beasts in one place, specially made cells or no. Something about their magijewels coalescing. I don't understand all the math involved. She's the expert. But she seems on edge just keeping the beasts we're using all in one place. Are you sure you can't just turn them loose one by one? 12 trees is vast. They could carve out a home for themselves here, surely. From Argos. So things were not going perfectly between the 12 Trees Druids and the North Storm Druids. They were neighbors and allies, but certainly not friends. The next one, to Bradford. You asked me to take count of what we know about the North Storm Circle of Druids. Other than the incident with Rawe, poor thing, I'm afraid it is not a lot. I can only offer conjecture based on evidence. They show up here every 2 months or so demanding we aid them to recharge a magic item or two with druidic circle magic. This tells me they either don't have their own ritual tome or none of them are fluent enough in Sylvan or druidic to make one. They are 12 members, just like us. Well, 13 if we count you. It stands to reason they are therefore less magically potent than we are. But that does not mean we should let our guard down around them. I wouldn't breathe a word about the Stormbringer cannon to them if I were you, and I'll tell the others much the same. Even if even one Druid of the Sun got wind of our plans, they could bring the whole kingdom down on our heads, sturdy fort walls or not. We're not regarding the North Storms as enemies now, are we? I doubt they could penetrate our outer walls, but they are our neighbors, quote unquote. We should at least remain civil and help each other when we can. It's what sets us apart from the Druids of the Sun, right? That's what you always taught me. From Regina. P.S. I heard your 5th child was born a fortnight ago in Dewhurst. Give those townswomen a break, would you? Ha! So, they're in a tenuous relationship with this other sect of druids that have much the same ideologies as they do, but they're a little more extreme. They're a little rapey. They're very demanding neighbors. But 24 druids, or 25 druids rather, is more powerful than a dozen. So they help each other out when they can, and kind of have a rocky, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours sort of relationship. Also to Bradford. I accomplished my mission in Dewhurst. The fertility drugs you had Hasso make have been added to the well in the center of town. Flower festival, indeed. Ha! I know you only do it to make sure we druids of the storm may multiply, but are you sure that the town itself won't explode in number as well? I'm all for another woman carrying, my Argos's child. It spares me the pain of childbirth personally, but we don't want Dewhurst to grow too populous. I'm still shocked that your cut down one tree, plant 10 policy took off with the local politicians. How much did you pay them off? Oh well, I don't suppose it matters. I just don't want Dewhurst to chop down 12 trees and discover the vast network of things that we have placed on their land to make the Stormbringer cannon work properly. That aside, Argos and I are heading into town in a few days to stalk the larder for Scarlet. You know how she is around strangers. She shakes like a leaf. Somehow I think she likes the fort and the forest better than the very own town that she was raised in. I say, why don't you join us? We're heading to go hit the tavern after our business is done, and I think we could use some time away from work. It's been a long time since I've had you and Argos inside me at the same time. Perhaps I can tempt you from all that damn lab work that Emily has you caught up in. Pretty please? It would do wonders for your stress level. I know it. From Rewa. So, yeah, there's a number of relationships going on in the 12 Trees cult, but they're trying to make babies over in Dewhurst in case they all get killed. And having learned all this, the party begins to suspect that maybe they're having children to switch bodies with those children so that they can live forever. That's kind of their working theory. And meanwhile, I've got one more paper here, but I'm not going to read it directly because it's bad. I'll tell you what it says, but I won't read it verbatim. They kind of like lean back in their chairs after a while, and they're kind of starting to get how this is going. The cult of 12 Trees set up the flower festival however many years ago for no other reason than to grow their own number over time. And even Bradford was having, X number of children per season and scattering them across the region so that, the blood of his blood might return should he ever get taken down or die or the cult be wiped out. And of course, here they are, 4 of them. Brindo, Ludwig, Salen, and Markle are related to him by blood. However many marriages over, how many generations down the family line. Blood of his blood has returned to Dewhurst shortly after his death. So their plan worked in that matter. So the party is dead sure that Bradford is alive somewhere, waiting to play body snatcher and grab one of them and replace them with himself, like switch souls or something like that. And they go searching through the house after a while. I think it was either Markle or Ludwig who went to examine their grandfather clock a little more closely, and I stole a riddle straight out of an old Scooby-Doo movie where there was a tiny little scroll in the cuckoo clock or the cuckoo bird's mouth whenever it would toll, it also had like a cuckoo bird that would come out and sing a little bit and then go back in. And it had a little scroll in its mouth, and he grabs it and he unrolls it, and it says, there are no treasures in this clock, so what does it lack besides a talk? And they stare at each other, and, Salen kind of sips his tea for a minute, kind of thoughtfully. And damn if Salen the rogue, his player, is one of the smartest damn people I've ever met in my life, because it doesn't matter what riddle I throw at him, whether I make it up or I Google it or I ask friends for help, Salen solves the riddle before anybody else. Like, you could just make something up. I've thrown riddles at Salen that were from, like, the Renaissance Fair that I had never heard anywhere else, and I Googled, and I didn't find them on Google anywhere. They were just made-up riddles, and Salen would solve them every single time. So, there are no treasures in this clock, so what does it lack besides a talk? It lacks a tick. So that's where you gotta go look, in the house. The tick. And they look at each other, and Salen is like, do we have an attic? A tick, attic. And they look at each other and they go, do we have an attic? And they go upstairs and they start looking for like an attic hatch. Sure enough, they find one. They're like, we didn't even see this before. And it's like, yeah, well, a lot of D&D parties don't bother to look at the ceiling. That's why swinging blade traps work so often, is nobody checks the ceiling. But they pull the little string and the ladder comes unfolding down, and they're like, well, Ludwig, you've got the sun rod in your shield. Go up there first. So Ludwig and Markle and Salen go up there. Brendo, I think, was working in the herb garden at the time, but the three of them go up there, and the attic is relatively empty, save for a couple of, like, dress mannequins, some dusty old boxes with nothing in them, and then they find, like, a picture frame. And inside the frame is an old, like, beat-up, burnt, curled-up piece of parchment that's like pressed under glass like an ancient flower. And they find a poem on it called Druids of the Sun, Druids of the Storm. And there's some silence because I passed them the poem and they kind of lean and they're all reading it, and there's like this 10 seconds of silence, and Brendo doesn't say anything because he's not there. And I was like, okay, you all stand there in the dark of the attic reading it silently. And they're like, oh, right, yeah. We go back down the ladder and go stand by a window. Who's going to read it aloud? Oh, I'll do it. Okay. So, Druids of the Sun, Druids of the Storm was a tale of two brothers who ruled over a grand forest together. It had fruit trees and animals and lots of druids, shaping trees, a small elven town that was where all the houses were made of trees and the brooks would go through every which way, and everybody lived in harmony and nature and stuff like that. And these two brothers ruled it. One of them was loved by the people, one of them was not, as they tend to do. And when you stand in your big brother's shadow for too long, you tend to get bitter and you tend to get angry. So the brothers fought, and the little brother lost and fled to form the Druids of the Storm. Druids that would control nature, for the sake of good, quote-unquote good, in such ways of controlling the weather or rerouting rivers, bringing down mountains, things like that, for the greater good, surely. And the Druids of the Sun, who followed the older brother, commanded ways to work with nature. So, bend with the wind. Don't try to stand up to it, Let yourself be washed about by the tide. Don't become a rock. You'll just be worn down. So, Druids of the Sun would work with nature. Druids of the Storm would work to control it. So, needless to say, the cult of 12 trees and the North Storms that they talk about so much and seem to be adequate neighbors with, they are both Druids of the Storm. So in total, we have 25 Druids of the Storm. The North Storms have 12, the 12 trees has 13 because they count Bradford as well. And they are all druids of the storm. So we kind of get some context on where these guys came from, how they treat their culty neighbors and stuff like that. That the flower festival is just them wanting to have more kids in case they should be annihilated. And it's like it's almost like Final Fantasy X, where like 1,000 years in the future you find out that the international sign of the Blitzball has become this sacred gesture. So Titus just like runs by, your religion's a hollow lie. Yeah. So yeah, the flower festival is a hollow lie. It's not a festival of love or a festival of fertility. It's a festival to help the druids of the storm multiply. So after that, they've got all these papers scattered around everywhere. They've got this, poem in a picture frame. They kind of set it to one side, and they're kind of poring over it. And finally, they kind of look at each other and they say, I'm not convinced. I'm not that Bradford is dead. And Brendo's like, yeah, there's too much going on here. There's too many forces at work for all of these people to be dead, and this is like the end of somebody else's story that we're finding. It's too convenient. We've got to find a way to confirm, at the very least, that Bradford is dead. And, Annabelle, their servant, has already said she saw him get buried, so there is a body under his gravestone. Do we dig him up and check? Well, he's going to be a skeleton by now, surely, or he's going to be a rotted corpse. He didn't have a casket. He was a druid. So, they are buried to become one with the earth again, so there's no coffin. It would have been immediately, worm chow. And they're like, well, how do we do this? Do we... we don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have anywhere to look that he might be hiding. This house is full of secrets. He could be in a fucking sub-basement 50 feet down some spiraling staircase, laughing maniacally and deciding which one of us he wants to trade bodies with. They were so hooked on this trading bodies bullshit. But after a while, Annabelle kind of speaks up just a little bit, and she goes, well, should we do a seance, or... And they look at her and say, Annabelle, can you do a seance? And Annabelle kind of looks meekly to one side. Her cheeks are red, and her eyebrows kind of bunch up into this hieroglyph of feminine worry. And she sets the tea tray on the table, and she goes, well, I didn't really tell you when you moved in, but I wasn't sure what kind of men you would be. And Vara kind of looks up from whatever she's doing, and she goes, what is it, child? What are you hiding from all of us? And she goes, I am of gypsy blood. What does that mean? It means that she can work a Ouija board like an alchemist can with an alchemist kit. She can use a crystal ball and see hundreds of miles away and spy upon the underworld and things like that. And the reason she doesn't go around trumpeting that is because talking with the dead is necromancy. Like, pretty explicitly. Like, speak with dead. Well, speak with dead needs a corpse, but speak with dead is like a 3rd level necromancy spell. Commune with dead is 3rd or 4th level magic. Using a crystal ball to spy on another plane of existence, the underworld. It's powerful necromancy. And they go, why are you a fucking servant? She goes, it's not something I was trained for, my lords. It's in my blood. And she's you can tell she's kind of ashamed of her heritage, because gypsy magic is greatly frowned upon in this setting. People that talk with evil spirits and dead things and make corpses sit up to talk with you. Yeah, it's bad juju. She didn't choose to be born into that kind of thing. She could actively curse someone if she wanted to, but she's Annabelle. She's a cook. She's a beautiful, happy-go-lucky, well-mannered servant. She does not choose such ways, and she doesn't pursue the dark arts. but she has the potential to, and the reason we have not gone into Annabelle's room in 4 or 5 game sessions is she has a trunk of all of her mother's old gypsy stuff. So she has a Ouija board, and she has a crystal ball, and she's got the little hat with the jewel and the feather on it, like you would see like a stereotypical like fortune teller with the beaded shawl and all that. And I know better than to make fun of gypsies, because I've seen Drag Me to Hell, and that shit does not work out well for anybody involved. But just in this fantasy setting, we're using the word gypsy, so nobody get offended. This is their version of gypsies. That they are mostly in tune with, like, speaking with the dead, spying on the underworld, telling people's fortunes literally, not just turning over cards and guessing things from them. They literally have clairvoyant powers. They can see and speak with and interact with ghosts. But again, this is all necromancy. It's bad juju. It's not something that Annabelle has any measure of training or comfort or power or ability to do. But she can try. She has all the tools. And, you can be a carpenter if you have a chisel and a hammer. You might not be a very good carpenter, but you've got the tools to do it. And if you watched your dad carve wood for 20 years, maybe you picked up a thing or two and never tried. So they say, all right, maybe we could try that. I mean, if Annabelle has the blood of a gypsy woman, maybe we can contact Bradford. If he's dead, we can contact him in, like, the underworld or whatever and find out what we can. So Vara and Annabelle go up to Annabelle's room, and they get her big trunk of private things. And if you remember, she's kicked all the party members out of her room multiple times because, no boys allowed. Ha! The trunk is why. Did Bradford know you were a gypsy? Yes, my lord. That was one reason I stayed very loyal to him, is he knew exactly who and what I was, and he did not care. Did he ever make you try anything? She said, no, you're the first. And they're like, oh, damn. Well, you don't have to if you don't want to, but it would certainly help if we could find out more about the 12 Trees group that your former master was a part of. And she goes, you are my new masters now, and you have tolerated me, and you have paid me so handsomely. I will try my absolute best, but no guarantees. So Vara and Annabelle bring this big trunk downstairs, and they bring it to the dining room, and they flip it open. Of course, it's got the beaded shawl, the turban, the jewel with the feather on it. It's got an actual Ouija board with the little triangle eye on it, and it has rules. It's made of wood. It's like a legitimate one, not like a Milton Bradley cardboard one. This is like legit stuff with like crystalline eyes and things all over it. And it doesn't fold up. It's a big like rack of wood that you sit out on your table, and it weighs a ton. And she sits it out on the table, and she goes, there are 3 rules to this that we must respect if it's going to work. Number 1, you cannot use a Ouija board by yourself. Number 2, when you are done speaking with a spirit, should you contact one, you must always say goodbye. Because if you don't, it's like, well, anachronistically speaking, it's like leaving the telephone off the hook. Anybody could talk or come through. It's not good. And then 3rd, never invite anything in, whether to your house, to your body, to your presence, anything like that. Don't do any inviting of any kind, because you never know who will snatch up that permission and then stick around, and it might not be anything good. So they all sit around the table, except for Ludwig, who is a paladin, and he will not participate in any kind of necromantic ritual, thank you very much. But the sun is going down, and they start lighting up all the lights around the house, and they close the curtains. Should we draw a magic pentagram? Do you need candles? Why? Do you have any? No. So they go into the kitchen, they find some candles, they light them up, they set them around so they can at least see each other and read what the Ouija board has to say. If it says anything, they don't even know. So Annabelle, their beautiful, talented, wonderful servant, sits at the head of the table in this giant chair that's meant for like the head of the household. She looks so small in this big fluffy chair, or this big leather chair. And she's got the Ouija board, and she takes the eye, and she's like, who will participate with me? And Brendo's like, me, I'll do it, yeah. And he puts his hands on it. And Vara, of course, reaches out. She's got long arms. She can reach farther than anybody. And then Markle and Salen do the same. Ludwig is going to be their supervisor, he guesses. He doesn't sit at the table. He doesn't do anything like that. So they kind of join hands one way, and then they reach out with all their hands, and they put their fingertips on the little viewfinder, or whatever you call it, that comes with Ouija boards. And she concentrates for a while, and the whole place goes silent. They can hear the boards creak and the plumbing clank, and the sun passes behind the trees out in the 12 Trees wood, and shadow slowly falls upon the house. And I go, Ludwig, this isn't as bad as Fort Stormshot, but you can certainly feel a presence, and it's not a positive one. And I go, we kind of came to an agreement about his detect evil, and I didn't really know that detect evil stops after like 1 foot of stone, so he shouldn't have been able to see through the whole damn fort. But hindsight's 2020. We came to an agreement later that I would tell him certain feelings if something came up. So he basically became post-cognitive. Not the most pleasant of gifts, but if negative feelings or negative auras were around, he would sense them, and he could certainly sense at least 1 or 2 in the house as soon as they started up the Ouija board. So they put the little eye or viewfinder or whatever in the middle, and Annabelle acts as like their telephone, basically. They're going to try and contact the underworld and find Bradford. Now, how did we do this? They basically ran a mini game. How strong are all the people around the table? How strong are they magically, spiritually, etc., versus how strong they need to be to receive any kind of answer from the afterworld beyond the veil. Because literally Annabelle is their battery. She's their telephone. She's got the blood and the power and not really the know-how, but the instinct to make this work. So she's going to try and be their antenna while they do this. And we are trying to reach the spirit of Bradford 12 Trees. Are you there? And I roll the fate dice to see if anybody's there. 95. And it scratches slowly across the board to yes. And they go, is this Bradford 12 Trees, the deceased member of the 12 Trees cult? And it wiggles a little, and then it settles on yes again. Roll the fate dice, 94. And it goes, what else did they ask? They asked a whole bunch of things, but again, an untrained medium working with a highly trained medium's tools, they didn't find out a lot. They asked a whole bunch of questions, most of which, again, I was rolling the fate dice. It's too low. Their spiritual energy isn't high enough. They're not connected enough. It doesn't move. You don't get any reaction. You can have a long session with a Ouija board and never get anything at all that means anything. I'm not a big expert on Ouija boards, but they are amiable at best, or they're unreliable at best, because you don't always know who you're talking to, number one. They could say they're somebody, but it might not be them. Because if a demon gets in because you turned on a spiritual telephone, they could say, yeah, I'm Bradford. You should invite me in so I can speak through one of your mouths. And then they possess you, and then you're fucked. So Ouija boards are very dangerous tools to be using. They did not find out a lot, but over and over it was confirmed to them that Bradford was dead, or he was at least, well, yeah, dead. That's the end of that sentence. That Bradford was confirmed to be dead, and that's what they learned out of that seance. And all this time, Ludwig is kind of looking around while, there are shadows in the corners that are moving that not ought to move. And, the floorboards above his head creak when they not ought to be creaking. There's no wind outside. The curtains rustle a little bit. Do you hear something stepping around in the basement and stuff like that? And eventually, Ludwig gets nervous enough that he thinks something bad's about to go down. So, much like he did with the zombies, Ludwig's like, okay, we're done. Whoa! And he does like his praise the sun, throws his arms out, and a shockwave of holy magic rushes across the entire house and blows out every, spiritual fuse box you can imagine. And little did Ludwig know that he actually ended a subplot right there and didn't even know it, because spiritual presence, however faint, can be banished with holy magic, or if you sanctify the ground, or if you have a piece of property like blessed, like, oh, it's holy ground, stuff like. Now ghosts can't hang out on that, so anything ghost-wise, anything spiritual, anything like from beyond the veil that was going on in the house, he banished all of it, all in one go. So, Salen's sleepwalking sessions were over after that. He pretty much killed that subplot in the crib, because that was actually going somewhere. But when he banished whatever ghost they were talking to, probably Bradford, he banished all the spirits out of the house at the same time, and they could not come back for what was it, 4D12 days or something like that, even like a really haunted location. He sanctified the fucking house. So every floorboard, every nail, every window was now a glitter with holy magic. So anything those spirits might have to say to them, well, never mind now. So Ludwig's impatience ended out the storyline that was going on with Salen sleepwalking. What was supposed to happen is that Salen would keep going to the same place and like tapping his head, so eventually they might try to like cut into the wall and look for something, and they would have found like papers or artifacts or something hidden like in the wall. But that subplot kind of ended there because of Ludwig. But at the same time, when they did this, when Ludwig did this, he supercharged all the crystals that were in Salen's chest. Because if you remember, Emily's armor can contain magijewels. They don't blow up, they don't grow, they don't crack, they absorb magic. So all the bits and bobs and crystals that were in his chest suddenly are aglow with golden holy magic, and they work their way out of his skin towards the source of magic and plink out across the floor in all directions, and then his chest closes up just as quickly because it's holy magic. So Salen's shirt is full of holes, like somebody attacked him with a Tommy gun. But now his Iron Man, Tony Stark situation is over because the crystals have exited his body, and he leans down to like start picking them up, and they have become bullets. Like some spiritual switcheroo combined with Emily's armor, combined with ghosts that wanted to help him, combined with the holy light solar flare, all this bullshit, convoluted garbage, all that happened all at once. These crystals that came from Redhorn's armored over magic horn, now they're bullets. And they were really good bullets too. They were like +3 attack, +3 damage bullets, like 10 or 12 of them. And he's like, wow, look at this. And he holds it up. It's like a pink crystalline-headed bullet. And I said, Salen, there are like 12 or 13 of those things. You can load them into your gun. They serve as a +3 attack, +3 damage. And he was like, wow, that's really cool. So that was me kind of making it up to Salen, because he kind of had a subplot going on with his sleepwalking, with the crystals in his chest and all that other stuff. So that was me trying to salvage the situation so that he got the reward that he got a reward for that subplot. So I was like, all right, all the crystals are bullets now, so he can have those. Because Ludwig basically tore out the last chapter of that book. But the house no longer has a spiritual presence in it. And of course, Vara reaches over and puts her massive hands over Annabelle's tiny hands and moves the little viewfinder over to say goodbye, even though there are no spirits left. So the seance ends and they start lighting up more lamps. Is everybody okay? Ludwig, what the hell? And stuff like that. I saw shadows moving about where there should have been none. What did you find out? Well, apparently Bradford really is dead. And, they didn't learn much more than that, much more than, like, yes or no, or like, one-word answers that really didn't add anything. The main bit was they found out, yes, Bradford 12 Trees is actually dead. The seance proved that. So, after Ludwig banished all the spirits from the house, Salen finally got a good night's rest, and he didn't have those crystals in his chest anymore, so Brendo would leave him alone. And they decide after a while, and they go, again, they have all these papers to go through, among which is a map. The only map that points to a new location that's not listed among the monuments. It's not listed with the Weeping Lion prison or Fort Stormshot or anything like that. It's another hidden location that nobody in Dewhurst has ever mentioned, or Sheriff Graham or any of the townspeople, any of the maps they've looked at for tourists, because again, the forest is full of like white marble statues and things, which we now know 12 Trees put there for something, for the Stormbringer cannon. Now, whether those are beacons or whatever have you, but the map that they found that was among all the other papers and files and receipts shows them where the Stormbringer cannon is. And they kind of compare notes and they do like geography and stuff like that to try and figure out, like, in comparison to like Fort Stormshot, the Weeping Lion prison, this monument, this statue, this circle of stones, all these places that are marked in the forest like hotspots. The Stormbringer cannon is an equal distance to a great number of them. Almost like a circuit board. Like they've built this place with these paths that are in these geometric patterns across a great number of miles given. You would have to be like in space to look down and see all these patterns, or have this map. So, anachronistically speaking, the whole forest is laid out like a circuit board. Like, it's all one thing. 12 Trees is not a forest. It's all one object, one weapon, one thing. It's all been connected like the neurons of a brain in all these weird geometric patterns that all meet at this tower where the Stormbringer cannon lays in wait. So all of our heroes decide, well, gosh, this is obviously our next breadcrumb. We have to go see the Stormbringer cannon, because if they captured a Kieran and they're using it to power the thing, why didn't they fire it? They obviously caught it and they contained it, or, it's a lesser air god. It would have burned the fucking forest to the ground. So they obviously succeeded in grabbing one and measuring it magically. They probably had the North Storm help them out, so 24, 25 druids concentrating on one creature. They probably sealed it up that way and turned it into a cannonball or something, because they called it the Stormbringer cannon. So it's like this big doomsday device is hidden somewhere in the middle of this forest, and they were going to aim it at High Seat, the capital, and destroy High Seat and all of its citizens, and then replace it with wild forest. So why is High Seat still there? They had the gun, they had the bullet, they had everything set up, surely, right? Well, then something fishy's going on, because all of them are dead. Bradford died, 9 or 10 days ago, before, 2 days before they arrived. But what happened? They were all gung-ho. They caught a Kieran. They fashioned it into ammunition or a battery or whatever have you. They had the Stormbringer cannon. Why didn't they use it? We're going to have to go check it out. Now, Vara, who has witnessed this seance, is deciding to stay behind because if she goes with them everywhere they go, there'll be 5 party members, and I don't feel like NPCing somebody. So she takes a liking to Annabelle and decides to stay around the house with her for a short time while she's recovering from the Manticore fight and from discovering that, yes, it looks like all the members of 12 Trees are dead. She might look around Dewhurst a little while longer. She can't stay. She has to go back to Amazonia or wherever she's from because her mission ended like 50 years ago. But if 12 Trees are all dead, she has no reason to go with them. So if they're going to go check out some ruins and look for a super weapon, that's fine. But she's just going to hang out and rest for a little while and keep Annabelle company. So the 4 of them, you know, they level up, they get their horses, they buy their potions, they do their shopping, etc., etc. You know, Salen's got his two revolvers, and he's loading up these magic crystal bullets. They're like, yeah, and then spin the chamber and set it in the holster. It was really cool. But they journey out towards the tower of the Stormbringer cannon, and they find that the foliage and the brambles and all the rest are arranged in such a way that they can really only realistically approach it from one direction. And they find, of course, that there's a big garden area set up. They can't see the tower. It might be, like, invisible or have a spell over it so you don't notice it, etc., etc. It's got a big doomsday device in it. I'm sure it's probably invisible. They kind of reason this out. But they arrive at the front garden of this place, and it has high, vine-covered garden walls, and there's another big bronze lion face like sitting out in front of the entrance. And of course, you know, Ludwig steps up again. He's got the ring. He's going to say the magic words, you know, for the glory of 12 Trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command. And the lion's face is like, correct. And it like sifts backwards and then to one side to allow them entrance. So again, related by blood, has the magic ring, has the magic password on it, etc., etc. So Ludwig's opening all the doors. He feels so important when he does this. It's really good. But there's a gazebo, and there's flowers, and there's a tablet, and there's vines and leaves and, you know, stuff all over the place. It's the entrance to a druid-themed dungeon. I mean, what do you want? But they're going to have to go through this high garden wall maze, basically, like an outdoor dungeon, or a dungeon with no roof, because it's all garden walls and courtyards and gigantic trees that have grown out of control, and little decorative fountains and statues of beautiful naked women who are holding a bowl, and you got to put something in the bowl and then the door opens and all that kind of stuff. So they have another challenge ahead of them if they are going to reach the tower of the Stormbringer cannon and perhaps find out what happened to 12 Trees, how they set all this up, got the Kieran, got the cannon, and did not use it because High Seat still stands. What happened to Bradford, 12 Trees, and the 12 Trees cult? Are they still alive? Or is our party merely chasing ghosts? And we will talk about that next time. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. I hope you enjoyed all the letters and background lore and the seance and all that kind of cool stuff. Have you ever had a seance in one of your games? I think it was just a neat idea, but I'd never done that before. It was kind of neat to try it out. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that story, and I will see you guys on the next D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!